I saved a story for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So yesterday there was a ban. The New York Daily News had a story of a young boy, and I remember the story from maybe a couple of months ago.
Mm.
He came to school with braids in his hair, and they
Mm-hmm.
sent him home, and they said it violated their dress code. It's a dress code against braids on male students as well as cornrows. This is back in July, actually. So now the parent of this young boy is suing the school. And I know that New York State just passed a law,
Sure
as well as a
did.
lot of other states in our
Yes, we
union,
did.
banning discrimination.
Yes.
They cracked down on all discrimination against people for their hair. You cannot discriminate against anyone for their hair. So Cuomo said, by signing this bill into law, we are taking an important step towards correcting the history and ensuring people of color are protected from all forms of discrimination. That's Andrew Cuomo, who's the governor of New York. And he said, for much of this nation's history, people of color, particularly women, have been marginalized and discriminated against simply because of their hairstyle or texture. So this is a Catholic school in New York City, and this is their code. And it's called Immaculate Conception Catholic Academy in Queens, being sued by Lavona Batts. She filed a lawsuit last month to crack down on, after the school cracked down on her son Jediah's hair braids. Your thoughts, Lurie?
Okay. Hair has been an interesting it's an interesting space to address issues of race, because we're really not talking so much about the fine lines of you are black, you are white. We're talking about the gradations in between, how we define what is acceptable racially and how we present in our bodies. And when it comes to black hair, we are typically told that our hair must conform to being neat. We hear that all the time in the professional place. In schools like Hampton's Business School has a ban against their MBA students wearing natural hair at HBCU, or at least they did up until the last time I checked, was just last year. A ban from their MBA students. They cannot be MBA students or in the MBA program and wear natural hairstyles. This is an idea that has been perpetuated for the ages, that says basically black hair in its natural state is unkept, which is why many of us felt pushed to use things like chemical straighteners on our hair. These are highly dangerous chemical straighteners that have a lot of ingredients that are highly toxic to black bodies. But because we have been told from the days we were on plantations where we did not have access to the tools that were designed for our hair, to the rituals that we typically employed when we were on the continent of Africa and understood our hair, we were not able to engage in the grooming practices that had been perfected over millennia, that were designed for black hair, to braid it, to twist it, to coil it, to do all of the beautiful, amazing things that we do. All of that heritage and culture and history that was wrapped up in that was something that the slave experience separated us from. There was a time period, and there's a phenomenal book called Hair Story by Lori Tharp and Ayanna Bird. And they talk a lot about how prior to slavery, number one, wasn't nobody looking for no juice or berry to make their hair turn straight. Like, that just wasn't happening. We weren't like, oh, I as an African woman in the bush, how I long for something that would make my kinky coiled and tightly curled hair straighten out and blow in the wind, the way it was never genetically designed to do. So let's just start there. That does not happen until slavery tells us we have to have access to that in order to access power. In addition, the book talks about the fact that on the continent of Africa, and prior to being told that the way we groomed ourselves was inappropriate and heathen, the hours that went into black hair care, because it takes time, and that's something that in our society we don't often account for, but the hours that it takes to do hair, the care with which it required us to take, was a part of the community. And there was messaging that went into braid patterns. I could tell who you were, your people, what your position was in your society, who you were connected to, whose family you were extended from, based a lot on your hair texture, your hair style, how it was maintained, and the rituals that went into it. We have to hold that up as the basis, because when we say neat, that is the definition against which we as black people with African textured hair should be measuring ourselves, right? So there's that standard. Now, I am a black lawyer. I work at a black law center at a predominantly black school. If a white lawyer were to come into my office and be fully qualified in every other way, but her hair was straight and blonde, and I and my other attorney colleagues were to say to her, now, Jennifer, We want to thank you so much for your resume. Unfortunately, our grooming standards are such that your hair is not neatly designed. It is not in keeping with our standards. You see how we all have twists? Because in our office, we actually do. I'm fortunate enough to be working in an all-black
Everybody
has twists. It's not twistable. We can't braid it. And for our clientele, your presentation is unkempt and it is not neat. And unfortunately, it is off-putting to those who we work with. And so for that reason, we're going to have to ask you to either change your hair. So there are chemicals you can get to frizz it up. There are braids you can put in. You'll have to spend several hours doing that. I know that's not a part of your hair care culture, but in order to be in this space and to be considered professional, that is what we require. Now, when I give that example, we often think, girl, that's ridiculous. Can't nobody do that. You can't do that to the white. Who would do that? You know who does that? Every single corporation in America that requires Black women and Black men to show up with our hair in styles that were not designed for our hair texture, and every corporation and school like this one in America that has a generic sounding grooming standard that is, as applied to Black people, racist in practice. Why do I say that? If I say you can't have Afro puffs, but you can have ponytails, an Afro puff on a Black girl is a ponytail on a white girl. The difference is a ponytail hangs down and Afro puff goes up. Why? They both have all hair pulled back. It's all brushed back. They all use a scrunchie to keep it together. But mine and my child is considered inappropriate because it's an Afro puff. But Jennifer's daughter, whose Afro puff hangs down in a straight line, is a ponytail. Neutral grooming standard, racist as applied to people whose bodies do not conform and for whom that standard was not made. So while I understand schools have policy, this is a private school, I presume.
Yes.
It's a Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
I am so grateful for the many women who went into battle to pass these laws. And I say, in full disclosure, the Center for Law and Social Justice in the 90s in the state of New York, it was illegal to have natural hair salons. We, along with a phenomenal coalition of women, Diane C. Bailey, Anu Prestonia, sisters whose name, and I shouldn't even start naming those names because there's a ton of them.
Whole bunch
Black
of them.
women who put it down, Talani Kennard, who put it down and went up to Albany day after day with legislation that we as a center helped them draft and had to push the administration in this state to give Black women the right to come out of their basements, to come out of their bedrooms where they were doing hair for their sister friends and be able to open up a salon where they could sell their services professionally. The ability to wear Black hair unaffected, unbothered, and unjudged is something we have to fight tooth and nail for. And there's another side of this that I'm going to put to the side for a second just to stay this way. I was about to take a detour. I was like, nope, we're going to stay right here. So when a school has a policy that's a grooming policy, 9 times out of 10, that grooming policy is based on a European definition of what is neat. It's based on a European definition of what looks appropriate. That definition, by design, excludes Black hair textures and excludes Black hair styles. Because if I'm going to wear a ponytail, but not an Afro puff, that means you are requiring me to engage in self-harm and cancer-causing treatments that are negatively going to impact my body just so I can make you feel better about the way that I look.
And it is cancer-causing. Story today in Vice, the National Institute of Health, NIH, found that the use of permanent hair dye and chemical hair straighteners, like the lye-based perms that many of us were forced to use as young people, were associated with higher rates of breast cancer.
Yeah.
The increased association is most pronounced among Black women, most likely due to the fact that the products we typically use, contain more hormonally active compounds that can disrupt endocrine function and lead to the formation of breast cancer cells. This is research that's been done over a seven-year period to study data of nearly 50,000 women between the ages of 35 and 74, all of whom had at least one sister who had been diagnosed with breast cancer but had no history of breast cancer themselves. The study was adjusted for a handful of factors of age, menopause, race, ethnicity, etc., and they came to the conclusion that Black women who use permanent hair dye in the year and also perms, 45% higher rate of breast cancer. 45% higher rate of breast cancer. We're literally killing ourselves to look like something. We're killing ourselves inside and outside. So we're killing ourselves with the chemicals, but we're also killing who we are to serve a greater comfort,
Yeah.
so other people can be comfortable.
Right. And one of the things that I've said, and I'm working on as you will know, I'm working on a second edition of a book that I'd written a long time ago called Afro State of Mind, Memories of a Nappy-Headed Black Girl. Don't go looking for it. The second edition is going to be better.
Don't
Just
you
trust
worry
me.
about
Don't get
it.
it. Don't
Don't
you worry.
get it. Don't get the one that's out there.
Right. And one of the things I talk about in the book is that since the first European colonizers arrived and forced us into these conditions, Black women and Black men, but we're going to focus on women right now, have been forced to twist, contort, manipulate, and hold our bodies just so that we could slide our way into the very limiting confines of a beauty standard that was intentionally designed to exclude us. And because of that, and because of the brainwashing that goes along with that, and quite frankly, not just the brainwashing, the very real benefits that come with not having Black hair under this system. We have essentially a 500-year trauma experience as it pertains to how we look and our own bodies, so much so that we within our own community have adopted a lot of these beliefs and perpetuate them as against each other. We all know that when there's a new baby born in the family, what's the two things folks are looking for? This color of the skin at the nail bed and the tips of the ears and the hair texture. Does your baby have good hair? And if the baby has good hair, there is almost a sense of relief because you know that child has a better shot than he or she does if they have the kinky, coily 4C texture hair that I'm sporting in this afro right now.
Yes, you are.
Yes, ma'am.
In the 1700s in Louisiana, the Tignon laws forced Black women to wear head wraps because their beautiful, elaborately styled hair that you're talking about made white women feel some way. So they made a law that you had to cover your hair in Louisiana in the 1700s. So this goes way back. I had a different view on this story.
There are a lot of, and there should be room for different views on this. We're still figuring this whole thing out.
Listen, we're not monolithic.
Exactly.
It's a Catholic school.
Yeah.
Why are you sending your child into a place that does not see him?
Okay, so see that detour I said I wasn't going to take? That's it. Let's take the detour.
Why are we sending our children into places and spaces that don't validate them?
Right.
So they have a right to have, it's a private school. You pay tuition to go there. It's much like the military and other places that you go into where there's a standard that they have, that they've set. You read the handbook when you signed up. And so either follow the rules or put your kid in a place where they can be validated.
Right.
I think they have a right to say, I don't want this, or I need you to dress in a certain way. We have uniforms.
Yeah. And
this is what we want. We don't want boys with braids, period. And I think they have a right to do that.
They do, until they start taking state dollars, which they also do. So they're a private institution. Most private institutions are still receiving some form of funding from the state and the government. And because of that, you do not get to employ practices in ways that are going to be discriminatory. Now, if you don't want to take any federal state money, we might be having a different conversation. So there's that side. Then there's the other side. Why are you sending your child to a place where you know that they don't like us? Why are you going to do that?
And then they're going to sue them.
Right.
So it's like moving into neighborhoods where they're going to scrawl, burn a cross on your lawn.
Right.
Now, I guess somebody's got to be the one, but why? Why?
Why do we got to be the one on them?
Why?